Hello and welcome to Food Systems, a podcast from the Forum for the Future of Agriculture, where we discuss new ideas that can shape a sustainable food system from farm to fork, from policy to consumers, and everything in between. I'm your host, Robert de Graaf, and you can find us on Twitter at Forum for Ag. These episodes will be available every other week on all major podcast platforms. Before we get started, we'd like to say a quick thank you to the FFA founding partners, the European Landowners Organization and Syngenta, as well as the FFA strategic partners, Cargill, the Nature Conservancy, Rabobank, Thought for Food, and the World Wildlife Fund. Please enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Food Systems. We are now in the aftermath of the FFA 2021 Month of March series of events, and we are catching back up with some of our speakers. The first one is Samuel Masse. He is the president of CEJA, the European Association for Young Farmers, and also an organic wine grower in the south of France. Samuel, thank you very much for joining Food Systems today.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
I wanted to follow up with some of the things you said during your event on the farm to fork policy. You said, and in CEJA's position paper also says the same, that there is not enough attention to farm income, and specifically young farmer income, in the farm to fork strategy. So what do you think should be included in the farm to fork to make the income part more viable?
Definitely. Thank you very much for this question, because it's definitely the kind of thing that is an issue for us currently, and even more when it's related to the farm to fork strategy. Because when we speak about the farm to fork strategy, we are looking at an horizon 2030, and for example, also in 2050 with European neutral carbon. So if I go back to your point on incomes, what is very important is to see that there is a lack of tools, I would say, that is missing. So if I can just give you some, for example, that we are seeing, is that we have a market observatory that is missing, for example, for us. It's very important, even for the consumer, the policymaker, but also us, the farmers, to have access to some data, even more on the price. And with that, we can work all together collectively to make sure that we have more and enough information to know where the market is going currently. Now, if I add that, we also need, because we have a diversity of type of production in Europe, but also this small and I would say short and long-term possibility of market and way of selling our product, I would say. And so this is more support in terms of farm diversification, which is very important. And I can express myself also my constraint that we are living, my brother and I, like that, and the need of that, this kind of things. Also, we have a need of balance in trade policy. This is very important that there is a big lack because, we have very high expectation for farmers in the EU. But at the same time, we want to import product that we doesn't want, and even our consumer doesn't want. So that's kind of things that we should be more and pay more attention on that. And of course, enhance trust between the producer and the farmers. That will pass with labeling, and more information will be better at the end to have this kind of trust between the farmers and the consumers. But also, and to finish on this point, we have also, as farmers, to get back in the rest of the process of the food chain. I'm speaking here, but maybe we will go back later, but using stable contracts, a lot of things could be very interesting to get back also power, I would say, in a sense, to farmers.
That's a good point to pick up on. Also, something you said during the panel is that a lot of the demands are on the producer side. So the organic stuff, the reduction in crop protection, the reduction in fertilizer, noble goals all. But it strikes to me that a lot of the demands are on the producer side, and the more you get towards the consumer, the less high stakes the demands are. So how should the whole food chain become engaged in paying for this transition to sustainability?
What is funny and not funny at the same time is that the consumer at the end is not seeing a reduction of the price. Because most of the time the pressure is on the farmers at the end of the chain. And it's what we are saying, and that's what happened during the FFA events. And I think it was very, and this is still something that we are living every day on our farm when we are in front of retailers, but also the rest of the process and the food chain, I will say. And because if I just can give you one why it's going on like that, it's because we have a lot of farmers, but we are too much divided, I would say, in a sense, because we are not, I would say, organized enough. And even through cooperatives, and sometimes to face just like a few people taking care of the rest of the food chain. And that's why most of the pressure is currently on us, I would say, on this specific point.
Speaking of pressure, one of the targets in the Farm to Fork is that 25% of the European farmland should become under organic. Now, I know that you are an organic wine grower. Do you think it's realistic to have that expectation? Do you think we will get there?
Yeah, definitely. That's the goal. The objectives of the Farm to Fork to reach 25% of the surfaces in Europe under organic farming labeling, I would say, or certification. And well, I mean, it's not realistic at all, because we are only at 7% currently. So to reach in less, I would say, than 7 years, because the implementation of the Farm to Fork will only start in 2023. So that means that we will have 7 years actually at the end to reach this goal. So I think in terms of capacity of farmers to switch to organic farmings, but also in terms of market demand, because we have to take also this into account, because that's also what is driving us also sometimes. I mean, that's one thing. That's also why we are asking a little bit to find maybe something in between, I will say, like that recognize what's already farmers are doing, even conventional farmers. I don't know if in English we say conventional farmers, but farmers that already are doing a lot in their farms, taking into account water reduction of use, use of water. I would say also pesticide, and they are already, I would say, on the goals that the Commission wants to reach. And we have to recognize this kind of farmers. And that's why we need something else. I can take the example in France. We have the high value nature label, I would say. And this is the kind of thing that we should, and I know that a lot of other countries worldwide are doing it. You go in New Zealand or in Australia, you will find this kind of reward, I would say, in a sense. And also that shows to the consumer this also, I would say, high expectation value that they're also looking for.
So one of the other big challenges that we know that are faced by young farmers, and we should recognize there's not that many of them. I think it's only about 6% of all EU farmers are under 35, is a real lack of access to finance capital as well as the cost of land. If you're not born into a farming family, it's very hard to get the money to buy the land and the machines to make a start of it for yourself. So how should what is the role of the EU and maybe regulation when it comes to creating a land market and a farm market that functions better for young farmers?
So when it's related to land access, because it's still the first issue for young farmers to get into farming sector, I would say, when you don't have, like you said, a family background, I would say. And even if you have family background, because this is my case, we don't own, my brother and I, the lands. We rent them to the family. If you add all the taxes issue that we can have with the state, sometimes when it's about inherit, it's something also which is an issue to get back to the farming sector and take over a family land. But the problem is that's an issue on land that it's member state level, not EU level. So that's why there is also something that we have, and that's why we are pushing as young farmers to make sure that we have the proper tools and regulation to support also the young farmers in each member state to have the proper regulation for them to give them access to land. And after now, if I go about how can the EU can support farmers, so that's why we are currently pushing on the budgets. You can see that now we are pushing to have like a higher budget dedicated on Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 for young farmers, which is very important. We are asking for 4% dedicated to young farmers. This is definitely very important. And after that, we have to get a lot of other support. It could be through investments, because that's a big part of the beginning when you are starting. Just buying a tractor is very expensive, but also any kind of machinery or even to plant new vines can cost like 25,000 euros just to plant vines. So that's kind of an example that you can have in terms of supporting young farmers to get into access to farming. Yeah?
So let's talk a little bit more about where you are and the other sort of constraints faced by young farmers. You mentioned on the panel one of the things that you're still not having enough is even in your village is something like fast broadband. If you look at your immediate local area, what needs to be done there to make it more attractive for young people to come in and takeover from an older generation of farmers?
Yes, definitely. The lack that we have in rural areas, as you said, or in remote areas, because I mean, I can easily say that I'm only 25 minutes from a metropole, which is Montpellier, which is kind of a big city, I will say, but still, even 20 kilometers from these kind of cities, we have a very low broadband connection, I will say, in internet. And the rest also goes with I would say the rest of the facilities that we can have access in infrastructures. For example, I'm a great grower, so I want to sell my bottles. But if I want to increase agritourism, so wine tourism, we can say that I have no restaurant or hotel close to mine. And so that means that if I have people, consumers, or tourists coming to my area, they will not stay long because they have no possibilities to stay in my area. So that's the kind of thing that we need also from regions to help also to figure out how we can collectively work with the rest of what's the other actor of local to help out. And that could go also into support related to also roads. Sometimes, I mean, you have farms so far away that you cannot get any truck coming to your farm. So that's a lot of things that we need from regions, I would say, and the support of the EU to follow on that, because this is a necessity if we want to keep tomorrow alive, our villages, I would say, and this is only going to pass only by farming, because the only activity that you can get in this kind of remote areas, even in mountains, I mean, that's the kind of thing that you will keep.
Well, this is an interesting question to me, because what we've seen, certainly if you stretch it out over the decades, there's just a lower amount of agricultural workers needed. There's less people needed because there's more mechanization, we have greater efficiency, and essentially, roughly speaking, the scales are getting bigger. If you look ahead like 10 or 20 years, like how many farms do you think we'll still need, and what kind of farms will they need to still be productive and profitable and sustainable?
But I think we can already see where we are going all collectively. Now we have a demand from a part of the population looking for local food access. And this is something that is increasing, and this is actually something that we are doing. And I think the COVID increased this demand also from a part of the population. But the rest of the population, I would say, the one that they are lower salaries, or I mean income for themselves, they are looking for affordable and low price foods, and how we can make sure that in Europe they get still access to EU, I would say, food products. And that's something that we should also take into account. And from a farmer side, I would say, and I can even say for my generation, what we are going to look for is how we can have a better life in the farm. So we can have vacations, I would say, in a sense, how we can still make income. And this will pass by diversifying our way of income. So that could pass by producing energy. I mentioned earlier tourism, but that could also goes with sequestering carbon tomorrow and using like big companies that they need us to make them reduce their carbon emissions. So that could be the kind of way that we will have. And also you mentioned new technologies, and that's why we will have through innovation tomorrow. I know I can give my example, but for sure that we will have horses to plow between the vines. So that's a past thing, I would say. But also, I know that we will have robots to spray in the vines, because we are not going to use the tractor anymore because it's too much work for us. And also, we don't want to have our horse having pesticide in front of it, even if it's inorganic pesticide, I would say. That we dedicate that for using robots to do that tomorrow, I would say. So that's the kind of way that we approach tomorrow in my farm, I would say.
So if we look at, the day of tomorrow, and also the farm to fork, a lot of it, the motions and the money for it is supposed to come through the national action plans and the new common agricultural policy. If you look at the state of the CAP now, and we're talking really at the height of the trilogues, do you think where the new CAP is headed, does it answer some of these challenges for young farmers that we've been discussing?
Actually, we really hope for the big issue, and that's why we don't have a lot of view on what will happen with the new CAP, is that will be through a national strategic plans. So that means that each member state will implement their own CAP, I would say, in a sense. And if you divide in each member state all the regions, you can have a lot of diversity on the way that they will approach CAP. And that's why we are asking our members to be very brief very be proactive in their approach also with the member state and regions to tackle all the issue that they are going to face and they are already facing, to make sure that we have access to all supports. Also, I think what it's important is to show that I mentioned diversity, but we also diversity of landscape that's make also unique in Europe for the front in front of the rest of the world. And this is also a need, I will say, that we adapt regionally or locally the needs that farmers can have also, because I mean, if you are in the Alps, you will not have the same needs than in Normandy or in the south of Italy, I would say, yeah. So that's the kind of thing that this have to be taken into account. So we will follow for sure what will come out from national strategic plans.
France seems to be one of the countries that is better positioned to make these plans and adapt them regionally. I was wondering on a personal level, just on your farm, have you already had a chance to give some input on the French national plan or even the regional plan for your area?
Yes, definitely. So I'm working locally with my region on that, on their, I will say, the regional strategic plan, I will say, related to the CAP. And because we have a need linked to the climate change and the way that we need, for example, access to irrigation, I will say, water, and that's a big need. And how we can improve that. I know that Spain, they are already now very, I would say, they have like huge access to irrigation. I think 30% of the surfaces are irrigated in Spain. And when we have only 10% in France, and even in my region, which is nothing, but we are facing the same issues and how we can improve that. And that's the kind of thing that we are working with our region. Also, we are a region under Mediterranean climate. So organic farming is exploding. I would say like a lot of farmers are going into organic. So how we can make sure that the region get proper and sufficient subsidies to give to farmers also, because the envelope that the region had in the past was not sufficient enough to support farmers, and so they had to do some cuttings, and that was a very big issue for farmers to continue in organic farming in a sense, because if I can continue on this specific subject, it takes you 4 years to convert it to organic production. And so that's why we need subsidies to help us in this transition. But earlier I spoke about the need also from the rest of the food chain to help us, because we have to have like a double support to help on the transition. And the big issue right now is that only farmers are living the risk of transition, I would say, not the rest of the food chain. And so I think we might, in a sense, share this risk, the rest of the food chain. And this could pass easily through contract, stable contracts that help you by increasing the price step by step during your transition, I would say. So that could be a possibility, even if I'm far from your question. But that's the kind of thing that we are working on currently with my region also and locally.
We've seen quite a big growth in the last few years of the organic sector, but the trend is not quite as explosive as it was before. Do you think the amount of organic that is consumed is essentially linked to general income levels? So people who have more money will buy the organic because they can afford it, but we seem to be sort of hitting the bounds of what is possible with organic simply because of the price differential. I don't know how you view that.
Yes, I think it's a big point how the consumer look at organic currently and who actually is buying organic products. I think step by step, also the rest of the population, I will say that they are not even enough money, I will say, to get access to organic. They are starting also sometimes 1 time a week or 2 times a week to get access. And that's why also if we look at the consumer, we should look like also to the restoration, to restaurants, and also how the schools. I don't know what we say in English.
No, it's restaurants and public procurement, I think is yeah.
Exactly, and how they can give access to organic farming, for example, children, and and so that's the kind of thing that we should tackle and give access. Now, if I go back to your question and how I see the future on how we can reach this and give probably to the market and consumer better access to organic product, I will say, if at the end, as farmers, we are still priced at a fair price. I mean, a price that's take into account the cost of the charges that we have to make this product. There is no issue. And that's why also we don't have to have pressure for imported product out of Europe, that come into competition in the same level because they will go in a lower price. And that's why also we have to make sure that in Europe, yes, we want to go organic. And I think my generation will be ready to go this way in one sense. But at the end, we also have to ensure farmers that they get the fair income since the beginning that I'm saying. And now from the consumer side, I think we are living for several years now, is that food is not anymore the first expense that we have from our current expenses that we can have, and in families. I mean, that's the kind of thing that we see. I mean, now we want some devices, it should be like a smartphone, a computer, anything, or even
So we're coming up to the end of the podcast, and I want to ask you the last question, which is the same one that we ask of everybody who comes on. If we can ask you for one idea or one suggestion as practical as possible to create a more sustainable food system, what will be your idea?
It's to make sure that as farmers, we can be more active in the rest of the food chain in one way. So it could pass, I said, by cooperative or union of farmers. I don't know exactly how to express that. So with this we can help also, because when you say sustainable, this is a very important point, because sometimes farmers are sustainable in a sense because we are doing what we are asking for in a way, But if we want to go more, it could be sometimes hard because the price will not go higher, in a sense. So that means that we will have to take into account this sustainability approach. And so if I just can give something for the future will be to science-base the tomorrow, using more research to help us to find new varieties, for example, to help us to continue this way. Like if I give my example of new varieties for grape varieties that they are ready to drought, to climate action, also to reduce the use of pesticide, and at the end also that the consumer will consume. That will be perfect. I mean, ready to drink, that will be perfect. That's the kind of thing that we need. So we need to involve more research, the consumer, and us as farmers to be part of the whole process.
Samuel Masse, President of CEJA and Organic Wine Grower, thank you very much for joining Food Systems today and also the FFA panel in the month of March.
Thank you very much. I was very glad to be present today.
You've been listening to an episode of Food Systems, a podcast brought to you by the Forum for the Future of Agriculture. In the aftermath of the FFA 2021 month of March, we will be going to a weekly release schedule to bring you follow-up interviews with some of our great speakers. To make sure you get all updates, please subscribe on your podcast app as well as on Twitter @ForumForAg to get content on this podcast, news, as well as all other month of March related content. Please check out our website www.forumforagriculture.com. Thank you for listening and enjoy your day.